Uh, it says we are live right now. So,
All right.
okay, well, welcome, folks. This is I've never done this with. I've done some Hangouts before, but never something that was considered of business importance, if I guess, if you will. Today, so first I want to say I'm on the Hangout. My name is Rob Aubrey. I'm here with Rebecca Jensen. And Rebecca is correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca, you are the CEO of the WFR MLS, which is also, or known as UtahRealEstate.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, a couple things. There's a lot of brouhaha runs around out there, and people tend to form opinions and make statements. And so the only way you can really find out the real truth is to go to the source and say, hey, okay, let's say you. So what I'd like to say, what we're doing today is we're just, Rebecca and I are going to hang out. We're just going to have a conversation. I'm going to ask questions and let the WFR leadership, come out and tell us what they say. What we're not going to do is we're not going to bash anybody. We're just here to be civil, and we're here to allow everybody to have a voice, if you will. Um, so that's kind of it. So your thoughts, anything you want to add to that, Rebecca?
Yeah. Well, just thank you for the opportunity because I know that in the absence of information, people make assumptions, and that can often be really bad for everyone involved. And so I would always rather be direct and transparent and let people know what we're doing and why we're doing it, and hopefully we can allay any issues. So thank you, Rob, for setting this up.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. It was kind of, and how it started out, just to give everybody that's listening, there was an issue, and if y'all saw the post, I had a situation, and I guess we'll start out with that topic, was on the notice of exclusive listing. Um, I had taken a listing. My sellers are like 79 and 80 years old. They live in another state. They mailed the listing contract, which I knew that was going to happen anyway, but it was a tenant occupied duplex. And so I had, and they wouldn't sign a notice of exclusive listing. I'm like, and I don't blame them, right? They wanted any MLS. So I modified my listing contract to deal with that. So when I published my listing, I uploaded it to the WF. I published the listing, and I sent the third page of my listing contract that had the clause, seller understands it's not going to be an in-laws until the photos are ready, and they were cool with that, rather than the notice of exclusive listing. And so, and they asked for the whole contract, so I sent them the whole contract, and I received an email saying that was not an acceptable notice of exclusive listing. My argument was that I wasn't trying to create one. And then so I immediately called Rebecca. Rebecca and I had, I would say, I guess she knows me. I'm a very passionate guy, and and I just go, and I rant sometimes. But anyway, so but it was resolved. I mean, and we came to an understanding of what's trying to be done. And so I'll let you take over, Rebecca, on that.
Yeah, so the notice of exclusive listing form is related completely to the issue of pocket listings. And pocket listings have been more and more an issue, not just here in Utah, but across the nation. And so we have, over the past few months especially, been getting more and more feedback directly from our subscribers saying, hey, MLS, we don't like pocket listings, because the whole purpose of the MLS, going way, way back before my time, was to ensure cooperation and compensation among brokers. And cooperation means that you agree to include all of your listings in the MLS for me to sell to my clients, and I'll do the same. And so pocket listings are a way to really undermine the spirit of the MLS and say, hey, I want to be able to show my clients your listings, but I'm going to keep mine in the pocket. And so anytime we saw that behavior, brokers and agents would email us or call us and say, hey, MLS, what are you doing here? And some MLSs have taken different approaches. And so we did a lot of research on it. We held several different user groups. We talked to a lot of people about this issue, and our board of directors decided to come up with a measured approach, which simply says there are absolutely legitimate reasons for not putting in a listing on the MLS, such as the one that you had. where the listing simply wasn't ready. You didn't have all the photos, maybe you had some staging things to do, or there's a number of scenarios where it's legitimate and it's not that you're trying to hold those listings in your pocket. So we weren't in any way trying to prevent what you were doing from happening. What we were trying to prevent was really the violation of the spirit of cooperation. And so we passed recently a policy that said,
when you say we, so let me ask you a question for how does policy become about? You know, because as agents, I mean, and I want to give you a little insight how the agents think.
okay.
The WFR, Salt Lake Board, and UAR, although three separate entities, okay, they all live in one building, and we pay taxes to all three. So, and all three taxes, you know, so we don't kind of consider you guys separate, but yet you are. So just to make sure, so and then the WFR itself is specifically owned by three different entities. So it gets a little confusing. However, to the agent, it's just one big ivory tower. So just to, I'm sure you're aware of that to some degree, but the agents, that's how the agents feel.
Right, and we try to combat that. I mean, I know that words are thrown around like Gestapo and others that...
Yeah, I do that.
I know. So we are all working together for realtors. Honestly, that's every day we come to work and we say, hey, we're not doing our job if we're not providing a quality service to realtors. And we don't view it as a tax. We view it as a very valuable service. One of the most valuable services that there are for professional real estate is the MLS. And we provided an extremely reasonable price. And so when I hear tax, you know, respectfully, Rob, I have to disagree with that. We think that
Rebecca and I have had a lot of respectful disagreements.
Yes. So to answer your question, the MLS is owned by three shareholder organizations: the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, the Northern Wasatch Association of Realtors, which is in Ogden, and the Utah County Association of Realtors. So those are the owners of the MLS. And that is also a common misperception, is that it's individuals. It's not. I have zero ownership in the MLS. There has never been an individual that owns any part of this company. It's always been those three organizations. So those three organizations appoint my board of directors. We have 6 directors, and 2 each from each of those associations. And they make the policy. And they make it in a number of ways. We try to get as much feedback as we possibly can, again, to provide a better service to realtors and be responsive to things that are happening in the industry, such as pocket listings. And so my directors, the 6 individuals on my board of directors, decided to address the pocket listing issue, and we did it by a couple different ways. First of all, the policy change says that there won't be any digital pre-marketing of a property to public websites. And so the issue there is that agents want to go ahead and post a listing, maybe, you know, to Craigslist or to KSL or Zillow or any number of websites, and not post it to the MLS. And the minute that a broker sees a property that should be on the MLS, in their opinion, that their clients are bringing to them, that's when we get the call and say, hey, this isn't right. This is why we have an MLS, is so we know about all of the information and we can be knowledgeable to our clients. And so we looked at this issue, and we got top-notch legal counsel in antitrust arena to say, okay, are we doing anything wrong if we pass this policy? And antitrust attorney said, you're okay. We actually passed our recommended policy change through NAR's legal counsel. They had 3 separate attorneys at NAR look at our proposed policy and agreed that it was in keeping with the spirit of the MLS and that it wasn't in violation of antitrust. So that's part 1 of the policy change. The other part is we wanted to revise the notice of exclusive listing form. And so we've always had this form.
Right. It was part of my listing package.
It was, yeah. And the form was very vague. It was very brief. It just said, hey, you're not going to be putting the property on the MLS. And that was it. And the agent could sign it, and that was where it left off. Well, we wanted to make sure that the brokers were involved because up until that point, brokers did not have to sign the form, and sellers arguably in many cases didn't understand, what are the benefits of the MLS that we are turning down by signing this form. So we modified the language and we came up with 4 different bullet points that were basic disclosures to the owners saying what the value is of the MLS that they're turning down. And we do not require anyone to use our form. What the policy says is you have to include the following language in whatever form you choose to use. So if and you did this on your form, Rob, you added some additional language saying, hey, this is the circumstance. I didn't have photos available until such and such a date, and so you filed that form with your language on it and our language on it, and that is completely within the spirit of the policy. And, like any new policy, we tell everybody as much as we can what we're doing, and I know that you were there when we announced this during the Salt Lake Board Town Hall with the language. We posted it to our MLS news section, which we also email out a link to that once a month on our broker updates. So we did everything, and mostly we had positive feedback. But as you know, sometimes a theory is a little bit different than the actual implementation, which is what you ran into, right?
You take it out in the streets and you go, okay, that didn't work.
Yeah, this was something that we didn't contemplate at the time when everyone thought it was a good idea. And so there's a little bit of a growing pain, and that's especially important for us to hear feedback from agents and brokers and our subscribers when they actually use our policy, and then we can refine them and make them better and more robust. And so
I have a question. Notice of exclusive listing. I mean, so because I look at it and go, well, I don't want to enter into an exclusive listing. In other words, I want to enter into an exclusive right to sale listing agreement. But if my client can't be ready in 5 days, now the way I perceive it is I have the WFR telling me what type of agency agreement I now have to have. And I'm looking at that and go, well, no, that's overstepping bounds. I mean, because that's a private contract between me and a consumer, and I don't think that's the WFR's position. So like I said, I've used your language, but I made it a listing, an addendum to my listing contract versus a type, because when I see the word notice of exclusive listing, to me that's now an agency type. So in other words, and I'm like, well, I don't think it's the WFR's place to mandate to me what type of agency agreement I must enter into.
Yes, absolutely right, and that's just what we chose to name our form. Again, you don't have to use our form. So the way that you implemented it by putting it as an addendum with our language on it, that's just fine.
Right. So I think that's where the confusion comes in. I'm like, well, that's not what I'm looking to do.
Right. Right. And so I appreciate that. And like I said earlier, that's one way, and we can post that out as an FAQ and talk here in the Google Hangout. Let people know that that's absolutely okay to use your own form, call it what you want, as long as you include our mandatory language. Again, that's in the spirit of your membership with the MLS.
Right. Well, and I agree. And I'm all for. Anybody that's been in the business probably 10 years or less has never really understood what the MLS is. The MLS was never a public utility to provide listings to the public. The MLS always has been a place of co-op. It was a co-op system between brokers. And like you said, I agree to put all mine on there. You agree to put all yours on there. In order to even enter into the MLS, you must offer compensation. Now, there's no rule to what has to be offered. I think there's like a $10 minimum or something like that. And if anybody argues that's price fixing, $10, well, God bless them, So, I've always had an understanding of what it was, the MLS, because actually I used books back in the past, but anyway, so.
Can I just stop you right there?
Yes.
Just for legal reasons, we don't actually have a $10 minimum. Our policy says that it has to be compensation, but it actually would be price fixing if we said $10 or $5 or something else. So I feel obligated legally to say that.
Yeah, that's why you're in charge. I'm not, So, but so there has to be compensation. That's that's the rule to be. That's part of co-op. So, Okay, so I think that issue is kind of covered.
Okay, great.
Pocket listing. Oh, there was one question that got posted. Let me check Facebook here real quick, see if there's any more questions got posted. But there was one question that got posted was about coming soon signs. So
Yes.
can you talk on that? I mean, because it can be lent to the spirit of pocket listings. So, I mean, so what's the deal with that?
Well, there's multiple factors involved with that. First of all, our policy does not say you can't have a sign up. And we
Right,
actually talked about that because there are MLSs that have a rule that is a lot harder than ours that says you cannot advertise unless it's on the MLS, period.
right,
And we felt that that was a little bit too far reaching, especially to coordinate the timing of a sign being put in a yard and in many cases, office assistant inputting the listing. And so we want to be easy to do business on that, so our policy does not speak to the sign. However, Utah state law does say that if you are advertising a property, you better have a listing agreement, and it's very common for us at the MLS to get an email or a phone call from somebody saying, hey, this listing isn't on the MLS, there's a sign in the yard, what's the deal there? And our response is to just follow our procedures, which is to contact that listing agent and say, hey, can we please have a copy of your listing agreement to make sure you're within our policies? And a lot of times they are, sometimes they're not.
right,
And we've had the same policy in place for that for years, and that part of it has not changed.
right. Yeah, to me, the coming soon rider is I don't know if that's the critical element as far as if you have a sign in the yard with or without a rider and you don't have a listing contract,
Right.
or you're not in compliance. That's a real issue. So the coming soon is, I've seen them and I've used them in the past, and it was my intent is never to, let's be frank. I'm not interested in, trying to steal a buyer from somebody. I just assume look for another listing below. If any agent doesn't get that, double siding, chasing listings is far better than trying to double side. So, but that's a topic for another day. Okay, so non-compete, that was a topic that kind of came up and started a shitstorm. It is what it is. So, talk to me about non-compete, WFR
So
employees.
WFR employees. So you're right, it is a topic that has come up recently because we had an individual leave our staff member, or our staff, to go work for another organization, and there are press releases about it. And I just want to say, we're not happy with him leaving, but we wish him well. There's no ill will there. It doesn't affect our operations here, and so when he decided to leave, we reiterated a policy that we've had in place for a number of years, and it basically says if an employee leaves the MLS to go work for another company, they have a non-solicitation clause that they've agreed to and signed, saying that they will not try to come after any of our employees or cause anyone at their new employer to come after our employees. And so that was reaffirmed again on
Right.
our exit interview. So I think we're covered legally there.
What about, how do you, and I don't know if you could even enforce this, even if you had a written document where if someone left and went to another organization that, I'm trying to think of the words, for intellectual property, how do you protect intellectual property? I know there's been some big brouhaha with people leaving Realtor.com saying, hey, they have insider information. So, how does that protect it? If it can be done.
Well, it can be done. And we do have, for example, many people know that we employ our own software developers and they write our system. And so
Right.
all of that software that they write, it belongs to the MLS. It is not the personal property of any employee. They're paid, and so they have very strict confidentiality agreements in place stating exactly
Absolutely.
that. And
Confidentiality, that's the word.
confidentiality, yep, and intellectual property ownership.
Right.
Very important. So they're not going to be stealing our code to go start a competing MLS somewhere, or we would have legal grounds to sue them.
Got
So that is in place. And then with the Realtor.com thing, I think that was more based upon trade secrets. And
right, and I guess that's what I'm looking at, trade secrets too, you know.
yeah.
So I don't know if that even applies in our arena. So, kind of had a thought that I'll tell you, being ADD realtor, it's like it's fun because like we get like ideas more than once, and they're like brand new again, you know. But you mentioned something, and I kind of lost the thought.
Okay.
It'll
come back to you. We can go back to
it. So, you know, it had to do with the the intellectual property stuff, you know. So anyway,
all I guess I can say there is that intellectual property is a strong element to what we do, and not only on our software code, but especially on our data and the use of our data and who gets access to our data. And that's one of the tenets that our board of directors uses anytime we come up with a decision to move forward one direction or another on our strategic plan. It's how is this going to impact the data, and so that's something that is always on the front of our mind here at the MLS, and that's why we have very strong license agreements and a department that polices those to make sure that the data that we are licensed, because again, that data does not belong to us. It's broker's data. The listing data is licensed to us, and we're viewed as being a steward of that. And so anytime we think that something is going to threaten that data, we pay very close attention to it. And we're protected through multiple layers.
got it. Okay. So I guess let's move on to there was the topic that came up, and it just so happened, and I want you to know that, you know, the Facebook group that I have, it's called Wasatch Front Agents, got about close to 380 agents. We do not spend all our days trashing the WFR. You got to know that. It just so happened 3 posts like in a row came up with the WFR, and it was like, you know, and I know when my phone started lighting up, I'm like, oh, great, you know, it's just like, you know, all I want to do is sell houses, right? So, but there was an issue on the tech support, and then where an agent was trying to do multiple interior feature searches, and I don't, you know, and then the technology apparently wasn't there, and it's one of those ones where, you know, I don't ever recall personally trying to search that way, and so I don't ever, you know, even if I did, maybe I didn't notice that the results weren't right, and it sounded like to me it was getting an or results versus an and, you know, and A and D. So but then the real issue came in with calling tech support, and the response was to create 4 searches, download it to an Excel spreadsheet, and write a formula to sort it out. We're like, really? I mean, that's, you know, okay, yeah, that could work. However, you know, our attitude toward that is, then what are we paying for? I mean, it's kind of like, you know, and the thing was, and it doesn't seem to be a very difficult thing. I mean, if I understand it correctly, it's a pretty standard Boolean search criteria, right? The word and, right? If I search this, I want this and this and this and this. So, but then I got a report that it's being worked on and being corrected. So, so tell us about that.
Okay, so as you know, we build our own system. We released this current system in 2010. And just to kind of frame the issue, it was on the interior features where somebody had selected multiple features and only wanted to match those properties with all of the features that they had selected. Mm-hmm. And it didn't quite work that way. And so I talked to my team here to see what had happened on this, and there's always 2 sides to the story, so let me tell you what our side is.
Yours, mine, and the truth, right?
Yeah, okay. So let me present one of those sides. Sure. So when that agent called tech support, our tech support agent walked him through it, and it didn't work as expected. And part of the reason for that is if you look at the fields in that drop-down menu, there are many of them that, for example, there's one, I think, that's mother-in-law apartment, and one that has walkout basement, and one that has utility apartment, or something of that nature, to where if you're searching for the general way to find that sort of property, you would want to match those properties that had any one of those. However, in the case of this agent where he wanted all of those to be on every listing, it didn't work right. And my tech support person said, hey, you know what, you're right. We need to address this with our development department. And so he knows that addressing things with our development department isn't exactly like snapping your finger and
No.
presto, it's done, right? It takes a little bit of time to revise the code, and then we have a very thorough QA process to make sure that it's not breaking things. And it just takes a little bit of time to make it right. And that's exactly what this tech support person did, was brought it to our development department and said, hey, this doesn't make sense. I can't help this agent today with the way our system is working. But what he could do, because that agent needed that information right away, was he tried to get a workaround and said, okay, to get the answer that you need for your clients today, let's go ahead and I'll help you do it with Excel. He did ask that agent if he was knowledgeable about Excel, and the agent said, yes, I am. I can do it that way. So he was trying to just help him that day while at the same time improve the system and fix, quite honestly, what sounds like a bug that's been there since 2010 that we've never heard anyone else complain about.
Right.
And that's not,
Yeah,
I'm not trying to get an excuse,
No.
but we do have a process that says, if I can't help somebody and it makes sense and the system wasn't designed that way, it's not like we're trying to make it hard for people to use. Tech support addresses that with development, and development got right on it. My developers have a very strong sense of pride in the way the system works, and so they actually fixed it. It's released right now, and it works the way that agent wanted. So. And we do have a process above and beyond that, because we often, and we love to get feedback on our system to make it better. And so we have a process where every other week we have a staff meeting, and tech support brings up their top issues that they're dealing with. And a lot of times they're new features. You know, agents would love it if the system did this. It's not necessarily a bug, but it's a feature request. Mm-hmm. And we discuss those in that staff meeting and say, okay, yeah, that's in line with our strategic plan. It's not going to be too distracting, and we make changes to our system every 2 weeks to help make it a better system. So there's a process in place, and in this case, you can see that it absolutely worked. We can't be all things to all people. Honestly, some requests come in that we can't fully support, and that's a hard message to hear, but sometimes we'll have agents saying, you know, we want the system to do X, and other agents saying, don't let the system do X. Or, right. You know, so we're kind of caught in the middle on some occasions, but that's why we have a process.
And if I could, and you know me, I'm not afraid to complain if I think it's wrong. So that's, you know, shyness has never really been something I suffered with. So. And I will say one, because you and I talked, and you mentioned about the you know, the whole price per square foot, right? It used to be we had price per square foot, took it out, you know, then there's a riot, you know, they're storming the castle with brooms and pitchforks. So, and you know, and I want to say in fairness to you that, you know, you always have half that want something and the other half that doesn't. So, and you know, I don't know how you would deal with that. That would drive me insane. But I mean, but that you guys do have to deal with that. So, and I think for the agent population, and typically you have a group like what I have on Facebook. I mean, it was never meant. My group on Facebook was never meant to be a place to bitch about the MLS or anything. It was always meant to be. I mean, it says right on the header, you know, 2 rules, right? It's like, agents only and no listings promoted, right? But you can come there and ask questions. Hey, I need a road cleaner. I need you know, anything, you know, and ask, hey, I'm dealing with this. Have you ever dealt with that? And that was always what it meant to be. And it's worked well. I mean, people get it. You can go there, post a request, and get a response within minutes. I mean, that's pretty cool. So, and you know, and of course it has all walks of life. So you got night crawlers, you got morning guys like me. I respond at 5 a.m. You know, you got the guy, you know, and then you see the guys at 2 a.m. I'm like, phew, I don't know how they do that, you know, because I'm, you know, so anyway, so, you know, so, and that was so anyway, that's kind of the group. But one of the things I did talk to somebody, because I got a lot of phone calls and I got a lot of emails from this, right, saying, hey, right on, man. You know, I'm like the Ralph Nader, you know, the unofficial Ralph Nader, and I'm like, oh, great. you know. So, but you know, and we talked about surveys, and they're like, you know, a lot of people say, well, they don't like to respond to the WFR surveys because they don't trust that it's anonymous. You know, I mean, if I get a link in my email, I know, you know, I can send out emails and track. So people sometimes don't feel that, you know, that responding to a survey that they're really being, that they can really express how they feel and be anonymous. Now that could
Okay.
be a good thing too, because like, you know, obviously it's not, it's positive. I mean, feedback is feedback, and then I don't know if I would deal with, you know, a bunch of people bitching either. I mean, you know, there's a balance between give me some feedback and like you said. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, we try to get as much feedback as we can, and honestly, we've done some surveys that are anonymous and some that aren't, so there is some truth to that. And part of the reason that we've done some that are not anonymous is because we want to follow up
Right.
and let those agents know. So, for example, we did one survey that was not anonymous. You logged in and it said, what can we do better? What's the one thing we can do better? And so it was actually soliciting what that agent wanted us to do for them. And we got a myriad of responses, some of which we had already done, and it was merely an education issue, like the system does that, or our policy allows that, or what has it. And we actually call back those agents and let them know.
Right.
The part of the problem with anonymous surveys, which the majority of the surveys that we do are anonymous, is that we can't really effectively get to the heart of the issue.
Right.
Because if somebody says, hey, a great example is the system is slow, you know, and we have spent a lot of time and money and resources upgrading everything that we can to make the system fast. But if an agent has spyware on their computer, they don't know that. We don't expect them to know that, but it's inhibiting their use of the MLS. And so we would love to get in front of that agent and say, hey, can we walk you through a browser upgrade? Or please don't be using Internet Explorer 8, because that is
Right.
notoriously vulnerable to malware. So issues like
And
that,
stay
and
and
we,
practice safe web and stay away from seedy places.
well, I'll let that be your message. But so, so in those circumstances, we are trying to close the communication gap, because we can make all the changes all day long, but if nobody knows about them
Right.
when they need to know about them, then their perception is we're not doing anything and we don't care, and that could not be further from the truth. So, yeah, those items that we say are anonymous, though, that's real. Like another problem that we see commonly is the use of the anonymous link at the bottom of listings, and that's where one agent lets another agent know something's up with their listing, and we actually carry on the comments of that agent anonymously to the agent that's receiving it. And so the agent that's receiving it they don't know who sent those comments, and we don't
Right.
ever say that. So if we say it's anonymous for sure.
Yeah. No, and I know that. I mean, I know that the, you know, you guys know who it is. I mean, you're carrying a conversation. You have to be able to know if someone emailed.
We
Right. But
do.
and
Yep.
wouldn't it, I mean, you know, because I mean, sometimes I'll sign my name sometimes because I'm not trying to be anonymous. I'm like, hey, dude, you know, you missed this or something like that. Actually, I do that offline. In other words, it would be nice if we could just send an email too. But then, and I know that. I mean, I go and open up their agent and grab their email address and send them a regular email because you know, and I know as the MLS, you don't want to have the ability to. I mean, the email, and because obviously you want to protect email addresses. Which, by the way, I thank you guys. I know they get scraped. I mean, you're never gonna. It's not a perfect system. You're never gonna stop people from scraping them. Because I have an email address on the MLS that is it's called WFRMLS@Aubrey.net. So I know if I get an email from that, somebody scraped it on CMLS, you know. So, but it's okay. I mean, that's not a big deal. But, so yeah, and sometimes it's annoying. I'll get people that don't know the rules send me one of those anonymous emails, and I just reply back, "Well, go read the rules and call me." You know. You know, and then, of course they don't like that, you know. So, but oh well, right?
Yeah.
So where are we at on time? We're doing good. So I budgeted an hour. I mean, maybe we can get it done in less. Um, I guess the last topic I'd like to cover is personally is property pond. Okay, and I'm sure a lot of agents. I personally was against it when it was launched. So I just want you to know I'm not a big fan of property pond, but and I'll tell you why. I just think so. The first question, I guess, is what is it? I mean,
Okay.
I'm a pretty informed guy, and I don't get it. I mean, how do I make money with property bond? If I can't make money with it, then well, I'm not even interested. So what would be the point if I can't make any money?
Well, so there are a few reasons that we decided to do the Property Pond project. And it came after a lot of research about how MLSs across the nation are handling rental properties. And so Property Pond is a sister website, if you will, for the specific purpose of marketing rental properties. And we designed it because, again, we had many agents in our market saying, hey, I need to be able to help my clients. And maybe they're relocating here, they're not ready to buy yet. They want me to help them find a place to live while they make the purchase decision. And without Property Pond or a tool from the MLS, they had to go and look at, a number of websites, KSL or Craigslist or a bunch of others, and try to figure out what was in the best interest of their clients. And it took them a ton of time. And some agents just would tell their clients, sorry, I don't have a tool for that. You're on your own. Get back to me when you decide to buy. And they didn't like that either.
No.
And so we said, okay, we talked about whether or not it would be most effective just to have a rental portion of the MLS inside the password protected where only realtors could post a rental. And that's where we paid researchers to look across the nation at the inventory numbers on MLSs that followed that model. And we found that almost in every case, Craigslist had the majority of the inventory, and that's because property managers don't necessarily use a realtor to advertise rental properties. They use whatever website, or they kind of have their version of a pocket listing where you have to go to that individual property manager to find about properties they're managing, but it was disorganized. And the research that we conducted showed that MLSs had about 1/3 of the total inventory of rentals, and 1/3 isn't sufficient for a professional grade tool. And so we decided to do Property Pond separately based upon a lot of feedback that we got, including a town hall event and other emails and user groups. We decided to allow property managers who aren't realtors be able to submit that inventory. And we're a couple years into it, and our numbers match up almost identical to the rest of the nation, which is realtors submit about 1/3 of the inventory on Property Pond, and the rest comes from non-realtor sources. So Property Pond is a benefit of being a member of UtahRealEstate.com. So you can use your existing login and password on Property Pond. It's all set up and ready to go. If you're a realtor and you submit a rental property, you get preferential branding and placement, featured listing, and there's no additional charge. It's all included in your membership. And so we want to make Property Pond a more robust system because I mean, the rental market is crazy. There are a lot more people that are renting, unfortunately, than buying.
Right.
And the numbers show that across the nation. And so to make money off of it, it would be more to satisfy the needs of your clients, and then they'll come back to you with a great experience like, hey, Rob Aubrey took care of me. He's a trusted agent. I'm going to go with him.
I think that's the wrong direction how I think. The
Okay.
direction I think is I want, especially during the crash, I mean, a lot of things, and I'm not going to say, hey, I mean, who didn't make, what mistakes didn't get exposed during the crash, right? When, we had so many sellers that couldn't sell, so they either went short sale, hunker down, or rented the property, right? So at the time, I mean, how many listings as we as agents, I mean, and here's a perception of, I look at the leadership of the Salt Lake Board, the WFR, are drawing salaries, and we're out there trying to sell listings, and it's not happening. So how many listings could have I actually offered to all the other agents with compensation, and we all would have made money? So here we got agents in bread lines, And, you know, and we got listings that, man, we could have made money if we were able to. So Property Pond is more tenant-centric versus listing agent-centric. So why can't I list a property for lease, offer it to every other agent out there, and offer them a compensation to bring a tenant, and we put the deal together and get out of the way?
So Property Pond absolutely has a compensation field. That was part of what made it different than, say, Craigslist.
I see.
So that is there, and that is the intent. And it is also to be shown as a realtor product, and that's why the realtor branding appears on listings that are submitted by realtors. Okay. So we're trying to enforce that image that realtors are there to help you with your real estate needs, and whether that's renting or buying, they have the professional tools to do so.
Okay. Because I always look at everything from a listing perspective. I mean, buyers, yeah, obviously buyers have to buy and tenants have to lease, but the business is inventory. It's always been an inventory business, and that will never change. So,
well, and listing agents can benefit too, because those buyers that you talked about that couldn't sell, but they need to move.
Yeah,
they can certainly benefit from putting their listing on Property Pond and getting a tenant right away that their agent helps them with that entire process. So it's both sides.
And when I first cut my teeth in sales, it was in South Florida, and I worked for a property company, and it was called Rent Free Realty, and that's all we did were leases. We would see anywhere from 2 to 4 ups a day, literally, and we would take them out, show them 2, 3, 4 properties, and sometimes we'd put them in an apartment complex because that made the most sense, where that apartment complex would actually pay us a commission. And our commissions were small, but if you're closing 6 a week, they weren't that small. So, and if you rented on a good sized home, you did a couple of those in a week, you started creeping up in the 6-figure range. So it wasn't, and this is, of course, when I first got in business back, 1,000 years ago, so that was good money. One of the things we had, and I don't know how we go about this, and if it has to go through the Division of Real Estate or not, but we had a document that was called an agreement to enter into a lease. And it kind of worked like a REPSI, because if you look at what a REPSI is, a REPSI is it's a contract between two parties, but it's merely a set of instructions, right? It's a set of instructions for the title company. And there's due diligence processes. So,
yes.
Because you give an instruction to the title company, this person's going to buy from this person, they have to prepare the deed, the mortgage company has to prepare the note and send everything to the title company. It's instructions. But it's contractual, but it is a set of instructions. So an agreement to enter into a lease is kind of the same thing, where you fill in a form and you name who the parties are. You agree to do this. There's a due diligence process. The landlord or lessor has the right to examine. The lessee has a due diligence, and the lessee has the right to examine the home if they're buying a home or leasing a home. If it's an apartment complex, it's a little different, that kind of stuff. So what thoughts on that? I look, a leasing business can be very lucrative.
Yeah, well, and that is actually one of the happy consequences of us doing Property Pond, which is we are getting more in touch with that segment of the real estate community. Utah Apartment Association was very much helping us develop Property Pond in the first couple of years. And they've been incredibly supportive of our initiative there, and I know that they have a number of forms that they have offered their members in the past, and I believe that the Utah Association of Realtors is now getting all of their forms so we can offer them through our MLS service to complete that loop. So we're working a lot better together, and in part because of Property Pond and the relationships that we have forged in the rental segment of the industry.
Okay. Well, that's wow. I guess I'm pretty ignorant on that topic. I'm not ignorant from this side of it, but from Property Pond itself, because I always looked at Property Pond as just like some bastard stepchild that nobody cared. It was a waste of money, blah 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 blah. And and maybe I need to take a second look at it. And I consider myself a pretty informed guy, so I must apologize for thinking that it is the bastard stepchild that it is.
Well, no problem. I'm happy to hear that, and because it was a risk, and especially we did have heat from a lot of people in the early stages of the project. And
I made myself clear.
I know. But you know what? It's been very heartening to hear the anecdotal stories that have come through. In fact, one broker told me that they had a real estate transaction from buyers out of town, and they had their furniture on the moving truck being driven to Utah, and the deal fell through. And so they needed to quickly find a rental property, and that broker used Property Pond, found a rental, got a little bit of commission off of it, placed their buyers in there, and then they were able to save the transaction. And so stories like that make me believe that we did the right thing.
Oh yeah, and rental, and I think part of rentals is, because I sent out my survey of the Salt Lake Board of Directors candidates, and and I asked about how do you feel about listing leases on MLS, and they're like, well, I don't do them. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So if we don't do short sales, we should list them too. I mean, that's obviously separate from you, but from the WFR. But I mean, it is and it isn't because the Salt Lake Board, there's an ownership of that. I mean, we don't really separate you guys. I mean, and I want to emphasize that all the time. And it's and I apologize if I offended you with the word tax, but anytime I have to pay, to me, it's a tax. Don't take that personal. Fees are, to me, any fee's a tax. So anyway, so I guess I need to probably look at it. And I think it would behoove us as members to maybe educate brokers on how they actually could make money doing rentals, doing leases. I mean, because right now, I mean, it's easy to lease a property. I mean, you throw a sign out there, you get 20 tenants, right? But that's going to change. I mean, that as more and more buyers leave, as their credit starts to clean up, because we've had so many tenants created by the crash. Right? I mean, if you were in the real estate industry, and I would teach. So I remember the first time I did a seller finance CE class at the Board of Realtors. I mean, I sent out like an email posted on Facebook. I had 100 people show up. I mean, there was people that just couldn't get loans. So I think from a broker's perspective, there's money to be made. Utah has always looked at leasing as a property management function. And I'm like, well, it's not. Management to me is collecting rent and fixing toilets. Leasing is leasing. All our listing contracts, I can't ever remember a listing contract not talking about leasing. That you get paid if it's leased. I mean, do we enforce it if a seller goes out and leases it? No. But if we can actually list it for lease, and apparently we can, so I need to maybe go revisit that before I, say, hey, I apologize for kind of calling it the bastard stepchild. But it is what it is. I'm not afraid to own it. That's that. So, okay, so I need to obviously educate myself more now. So, trying to think, let me go back to Facebook real quick. Let's see if I got any things in there about comments. I don't know how many people are watching live. I mean, I know it's going to be recorded. It's recording, so it can be played later, and I'm assuming more people will watch it later. No, I don't have any additional comments on that topic. So, okay.
Okay.
So, well, this is, I got to say, this was, I enjoyed this, and I think, and I'm open to do more of it. Let's just pick a topic and let's work it.
I would love to. I mean, the more that we can be out in front of issues that you all are experiencing, the better our system is going to be, and hopefully the more helpful that we can be to all of the agents. Okay. So thank you so much again for setting this up. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, this was intent. I mean, I know you well enough where I call you, and I'm pretty satisfied typically. I don't always agree with policy, so, and I guess I have a better understanding now so the word notice of exclusive listing is not necessarily an agency agreement.
No, it's just a way that if you're not going to submit it to the MLS, you need to let the MLS know, and you need to let your sellers know that there are ramifications to that.
Okay, because the word exclusive listing implies that it is.
Okay, fair enough. And we can look at renaming the form. And like I said, we've had this form forever, and so we changed the form. maybe
Well,
we
yeah,
can
I mean,
set
lie
it up.
bounding isn't a form. You just lie when you publish your listing. I mean, that's what people do. You know it, I know it. But they're not and it's not a violation of the spirit. I mean, if, like I said, this particular listing that created the ruckus I had, I mean, hell, it was signed on August 1st. It was mailed on August 4th, right? I actually got it on August 7th. I mean, the day I received it, I was not compliant. I'm like, well, but I had this language in there called MLS entry. And I wanted to bring that up. So when I got the email, because you and I were like, I'm going rounds with you on the phone, and you're like, well, we can work with you on the fine. I'm like, it's not about the money. I'm not paying it, but it's not about the money. It's my attitude, right? I'm not paying you. So, and then, but then I got an email from saying you're forgiven, and I'm like, I'm forgiven. No. Where's the apology for? I was tried, convicted, and sentenced without a trial. And I'm like, whoa, and you're telling me I'm forgiven? I mean, I look at that as going, that's an attitude issue.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that. We have automated emails that go out from our system, and I mean, we have a fine process that, you can contest the fine and take it to the board, and then they can forgive that fine. And anyway, I don't want to go too far into the details on that. We're looking at those emails to soften them up a little bit more. It wasn't something willful.
Right? I mean, because I didn't it was after I got that email is when I published and I'm counting it away on Facebook. Son of a bitch. I'm forgiven? No. So, I mean.
I know. I'm sorry. I mean, really, we don't mean to come across that way.
Right. That's what it was.
It was business with.
And that was after you and I had talked. You're forgiven. I'm like,
we are looking at those emails to reword them again. You have no idea how many times we've tried to reword the emails to fit different situations, and clearly we can do better. So.
I mean, the word "oops" would work for me. I mean, that would that'd be cool.
What the word what?
Oops. Oops.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway. All right, cool.
Okay.
Well, so I guess no more. I'm going to check Facebook one more time before we go. Nope, I don't see anything. So we're good there. So let's great. I mean, I had a lot of fun today.
Yeah, me too.
So, and and if there's any other topics, I think this works both ways. I mean, I feel the agents. Again, I'm kind of the self-appointed, and everybody agreed Ralph Nader kind of guy. But I wanted it to be a two-way communication, and I would invite anybody on the WFR board. If you're a member of the board of directors. Oh, real quick. There's three boards of realtors that own the MLS. How are the board of directors appointed? Now, I think we touched on this, that each MLS kind of has their own process for appointing or assigning members to your board of directors.
Each of the shareholder associations, yes. So we have 3 shareholder associations, Salt Lake Board, Northern Wasatch, and Utah County. Right. Yeah, and so our bylaws, we don't have any authority to say who's going to be our director as far as us internally. It's up to the shareholder associations to come up with those appointees, and it's up to them to handle it. So
if any of anybody from across the Wasatch Front, if you know how this works and you're on the board of directors of any of the 3 shareholder associations, I mean, post it on Facebook. Tell us how it's done. I mean, because and why I'm not going to accuse anybody of being behind closed doors, but that's the perception. And sometimes perception's is stronger than the truth, because if the truth is not known, perception becomes the new truth.
Assumptions are made, right?
Politicians do it all the time. They say it long enough, and it gets said long enough, and there it is. It becomes true.
I know that their boards of directors discuss who the appointees are going to be, and so it would probably be appropriate just to talk to their boards of directors. Sure. But I'm not in those meetings when they're discussing who the appointees are going to be, so I can't directly comment on them. I just know that they have different processes depending on the board of realtors, and We just get the appointments, and the appointees are discussed and decided upon in the UtahRealEstate.com shareholders meeting. And so every year, or not every year, but we have essentially 2 at a time that will come up for appointment. And
so they serve two people serve 3 years?
Yeah, so we have a 6-year term limit. So they can be reappointed one time because it's a 3-year term.
Okay.
And so anytime a director is either up for reappointment or it's a new director coming on the board, the other 2 shareholders have to approve that appointee. So we do have a process per our bylaws about who those appointees can be. They have to be approved. But as far as how they come up with the names of the appointees and how they decide ultimately who to appoint, that's up to their boards of directors at the shareholder level.
Got it. Okay. All right, cool. All right, well, I appreciate your time, Rebecca.
Thank you. Can I just say one other thing, which is
absolutely.
we have the MLS News segment of our website. As soon as you log in, it's on the right-hand side, and we have a little badge on there anytime we have a new announcement. And every single month, we try to put up a PowerPoint slide deck so you can look and see what we're doing and hopefully share those if you have an office meeting. That's how we try to communicate with our members to let them know about issues like the notice of exclusive listing, policy changes, technology changes.
I missed that. I mean, I've seen people, I've helped people, they log in and I'm like, in the red number, it's like 47, Mine's, I'm like, okay, obviously you don't know what's going on. I mean, mine's like,
click on it. Right.
I had 2 one time, where I actually read that stuff, but, silly me, right?
Well,
I actually read things.
I don't know if you've seen that TED.com talk by Malcolm Gladwell about, I think it was spaghetti sauce, about how there is no one-size-fits-all, everyone has a different flavor, and I think communication is exactly that way. There's no one-size-fits-all. Some people love email, some people love text, some people love going and getting it when they want to.
Right.
We try to cover the spectrum. If anyone has a sales meeting that they would like me to go and present and discuss MLS issues, I would love to do that. I love doing sales meetings. But
it gets you out of the office.
it's fun to see what everyone does.
Sure.
Every office has their own culture and flavor. So I just want to throw that up there and kind of let you know to look for that broker sales meeting message once a month. We post it the first Friday of every month.
Perfect. And let's talk in the future. You and I will email. Because I like email. Email, because the thing why I love email, because it's searchable. You know what I mean? I can store it and search it later versus text. Text is like. So, I think I'd like to do more of these, and even if we had some maybe tech support people, or maybe Kevin doing some maybe talk about a new issue that's rolling out, or hey, here's our maybe once a month to 10, 15 minutes and say, and you don't have to do it online, you do it yourself, but just say here's our top 10 or top 3 tech support questions. So obviously, if these questions are coming in, then the rest of you are having the same issue. Yeah,
right. I would love to do that. And one of our top tech support issues is getting people to get off IE 8, Internet Explorer 8. Just don't do that. If you have Windows XP, use Firefox or Chrome.
Right.
And also, if you think that our system is running slow, please call our tech support line.
Reboot. I always say reboot before you call me.
Well, but there might actually be spyware on your machine.
Right.
We can help you remove it, and your experience will be so much better, I promise.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing if you think we advertise to agents inside the MLS. That's guaranteed spyware. We do not post advertisements to agents inside the MLS. So just give us a call. Give tech support a chance.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
I love you guys. I mean, it's a kind of a, it's, from the inside from the agent, when you're out there and you're trying to put a deal together, and and you're in the heat of the battle, and it doesn't work. We just don't want to hear it. I mean, it's tough.
We don't want that. Don't want that.
So defense of the agent, because we live in, it's not a high volume business per se. I mean, there are some high producing agents, but the average agent, if they're doing 2 deals a month, that's a pretty good living. They can make some good money. So. But and it takes a lot sometimes to put these deals together, and you just want it to work, and that's it.
That's what we want. Our interests are aligned.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks, Rebecca. You have an awesome day, and call me if you ever have any questions.
Awesome. Thanks.
See.
See ya.